It is season 2. We're changing things up for you. I'm so excited about this. We've got a panel of experts on the topic of sex. Where's the live studio audience that just roars with that? Dr. Pari Ghodsi,
Hi.
you are back in season 2.
It's happening.
You're the first person who now has had a repeat
that's awesome.
appearance on the show. OBGYN,
Yes.
you deliver babies. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So happy to have you.
Ready for round 2.
Dr. Alexandra Solomon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's a little bit of a dream team of mine to talk about a great topic of sex. So we've got a doctor, OBGYN, you deliver babies. I want you guys to introduce yourselves to the folks in a second. And then, Alexandra, you are a professor and a couples therapist. Mm-hmm. So how great for the crowd to have 2 experts. I mean, how often do you go in, you see a doctor, it's great. I'm not, putting us down, but to kind of get 2 sides and different perspectives on these topics. I'm so excited. Thank you both for being here. Okay, tell them a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Dr. Pari Ghodsi. As Dr. Burchett says, I'm a OBGYN. I deliver babies, but I do a lot more than that as well. The gynecology side of it, we take care of, all women's health concerns. And outside of my practice, I'm an advocate for women. I do a lot of women's health work. I work with nonprofits and get to do fun stuff like this, educating people.
Great.
I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. So I've been at Northwestern University since my doctoral training. So I kind of think of my career as having these 3 different aspects. So I do couples and individual therapy, and then I teach and train. I teach and train graduate students, and then also teach an undergraduate relationship education course. And then the third thing I do is just translate what we do in our offices and research labs to the general public in the form of self-help books and talks and retreats and conversations like this.
Mm-hmm. I'm so excited you guys are both here. I'm going to plug your book really quick. I'm going to plug your book when you write it.
when I write it.
Trying to pressure you to write a book. So here is Loving Bravely, and I'm going to talk about it a little. I'm going to talk about it later too. But it's such a great book. This is. They're telling me I need to make it higher. Is it? How about there? I think this is one of the best books I've ever read on relationships. Check it out. You've got a new book, which is why you're here on the book tour. Oh, it's about sex. Taking Sexy Back. You're Sexy, as you call it in that book. I zipped through it over the weekend. Let's do it. Let's get into it. So let's go right at it. I want to bring up a topic that you and I actually talked about on camera before, orgasm. And you have had patients who have never had an orgasm before, women.
Yes.
I'm thinking like there are people in the audience who maybe that's them, or maybe they have problems with that, or like, God, is there something wrong with me? Is everybody having an orgasm every time? Let's start there.
Sure. So before we kind of get into people that have never had one, I kind of want to start with the last thing that you said, which was, is it okay if I'm not having an orgasm every time? Because that's a more broader topic, and also is more common than the people that have never had one. So we can kind of start there. But first thing I want to say is, this is, I think when you're speaking, you're speaking as a woman saying this because you're speaking to me that's an OBGYN and who I'm seeing as women. So with men, that kind of, I don't know as much about it. Maybe you can speak more to some of that stuff. But when it comes to women, it's common for women to not have an orgasm during penetrative intercourse. And a lot of times people think that's abnormal, but it's really only about 30 to 40% of women that can achieve orgasm with penetrative intercourse without any sort of additional stimulation, either oral or manual stimulation of their clitoris. So, that's really common. That means that the majority of people can't. So the majority of people, it's more of a norm. And so I think that's something that we have to kind of educate people about and talk about more, so that we can change the expectation for intercourse for people.
I think that's a great kind of backing up a little bit and kind of connecting to everybody. For everybody in the crowd, like, we're going to go right at it. You know, it's starting out kind of heavy and medical, but I think this is the stuff that is important to talk about. So I got curious when you said penetrative intercourse, and then you said without other stimulation. I was like, oh, what other stimulation might there be to help us get there or have a better sexual experience?
Well, what I'm referring to is for women, a lot of women can only achieve orgasm if they have direct clitoral or clitoral, whichever way you want to pronounce it.
Wait a minute, is there no...
I don't think
you're
there's
an OBGYN.
there's not really a consensus
how do
on
you
that.
say
It's
it?
a tomato. I usually say clitoris, but then sometimes if I say clitoral, I'll just go faster and say clitoral.
Clitoris.
Yeah.
I say clitoris. What do you say?
I say clitoris.
See,
Oh.
it's a tomato.
You know, a Chicago girl. Maybe it's regional.
It's a tomato, I think. So that's why I said both, because I wanted to make sure both all over the United
Everyone
States.
knows. Or we could just say the clit.
Yeah, we could. We could.
there you go.
We could go there with it. So I do think, though, that so my point was that many women need direct clit. I'm going to abbreviate.
Toral.
Yeah. Stimulation in order to achieve an orgasm, and they're not, necessarily getting that if they're having just penetrative intercourse. So they might need hand, oral, if you want to bring in like a sex toy, but something that will stimulate the clit.
So I'm thinking about this, and I think some people may be encountering some of these ideas for the first time, and it's like, oh, it's okay or good, or maybe we could try more than just traditional missionary sex, and that's that.
But even if not positional, because if you think about it, it's even missionary actually is one that I think you could generate a decent amount of clit stimulation if you wanted to and your bodies were closed.
Is it all about clit stimulation?
No, not for everybody, not the external. But we can also talk about this because we've talked about this before.
You want to go to the G spot?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say if that's a transition into that.
Let me pause you for
Yeah.
a second. I want to open up for our couples therapist. What's going through? What are you thinking as we're having this conversation? What do you think?
Well, I think this piece, I think it's really gives us pause to know that there are so many women, and for those who are partnered with men, so many men who don't have this really basic piece of information. And what I worry about is that when people then have that piece of information, it can create some shame. Like, why didn't I know this, or what's wrong with me? And what I want to make sure we do is widen out to know that this is a deeply systemic problem.
Yeah.
So there was a team of gender studies professors who looked at old medical anatomy textbooks that until very, very recently would just blur the clitoris out of medical anatomy textbooks. And what we are not, so it really is a point of curiosity, like, why? Why the silence? Why the not knowing? Why didn't we ever diagram, right? It's not just this little button you see from the outside of her body. It's a structure that extends, 4 inches, and it's into the labia. It's down towards the pubic bone.
Right.
So if we don't, but that's only within the last 20 years we've had that full 3D sense of what's going on there, right? And so there's been this collective,
last 20 years.
it's been a collective ignorance.
Think about it. Do you remember? What
did you guys
I
learn?
didn't learn anything. Not in medical school. I don't remember. Did you dissect the clitoris in medical school?
Well,
No.
that feels. Did I?
I mean, in
did I
anatomy-
dissect? Did I dissect the penis?
Yeah, in anatomy we did.
You dissected.
we
You
did.
dissected the penis.
Wow.
I would think
We-
I would remember.
We did. In anatomy we did, and in the least, I remember looking at the anatomy book and the penis. You go through all the glands and this and that, and the nerves and
I have a vivid memory that
But you
I
don't
don't want to
with
be
it.
too graphic, but
Yeah.
there was a pelvic. We had one that was kind of extra dissected and everything, and it was University of Kansas. I know. This was 2000. I did gross anatomy in 2003, 16 years ago. I don't feel like it was hidden. I feel like
I don't think it was hidden, but I don't think they're.
We didn't dissect
We
it
didn't
all up and go
and talk about the nerve endings, and I don't think so.
But I do feel like, even now saying that, imagining dissecting a penis or clitoris, that's kind of in my head. feels way different. There is kind of,
Yeah.
as opposed to,
Sacredness.
oh, I'm going to, yeah, right. Yeah,
Right.
like, oh, I'm just going to dissect the bicep. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, get in
Yeah.
there and no big deal.
But I do think that what Dr. Solomon is pointing to, though, is that in the least dissect or not dissect, there's not as enough attention paid to it.
Right.
That's the main thing, is like when you're, you and I have talked about
20
before,
years.
and what we were about to get into was about like the G-spot and what is the G-spot. And now I think what the consensus is, and what I kind of believe, which we talked about before, is that it's just an extension of the clitoris that, goes back. But the fact that none of us really know this, it's been this elusive thing for like hundreds of years.
So wait a minute.
Right, and people will be like, we have the female orgasm is so elusive. Where women are like, no, I actually have some thoughts on that. We'll never know.
never know.
Well, actually, and so now there are studies where if you survey a woman, she can tell you circular motion, women who do have a degree of comfort and familiarity and really have learned this piece of information, then it opens up a brand new chapter for her and for her partner, whether her partner is a man or another woman, because now we can move away from that script that we all learned on the playground in elementary school of first base, second base, third base, home run, right? We have elevated penetrative sex as the most sex you can have, or somehow that's the thing. Even our language, right? Foreplay. So the things that tend to be the most orgasm producing for those with vulva are the things we relegate to foreplay, like the stuff you do to get to the main thing.
Right.
So it just is fascinating how the sort of gender politics and the ways in which both sexes are set up for failure, really, because if she's not having...
How is it set up for failure?
For a man to think, for a male partner to think that the thing I'm going to do that's going to give her an orgasm is I'm going to thrust, right? It's going to be my thrusting that's going to really bring her the most delight. It puts tremendous pressure on him to get and maintain an erection. And they're both trying to do this thing that's not the most effective thing. And so he then...
To that end.
Yeah, towards that end. And so he has this whole body that can be pleasure producing, right? He's got far more that's pleasure producing on his body than just his penis. And so he's not making use of all the ways that he can bring pleasure to her. And she's not feeling like she can advocate for, actually, you know what, the penetration is fine, but that's not going to be my favorite part of this adventure. And how can she say that without feeling like she's going to hurt his feelings? Or, it becomes the opportunities for communication gaps, silence are just... so big.
Well, and I think that's what leads to, that small percentage of people that the women that haven't, achieved orgasm. That's all of that is what leads to that most of the time. I mean, there's less than 1% of people that cannot achieve an orgasm no matter what. And a lot of sometimes that's medical issues or medications.
99% can, maybe 1% or less can't.
Right.
I feel like a number I read was 10% don't, or haven't ever.
But haven't ever.
But potential.
But what I'm saying is potential. Because I'm saying, yes, 10% maybe have never, but I think it's less than 1% that actually can't if they were to still try and, all of the ways that they possibly could. The 10%, I think, is because of these things, because we have this kind of scripts, societal norms, all this stuff where a woman assumptions, a woman gets into a situation where she actually doesn't feel that her ever achieving an orgasm is even an important thing with sex.
Right.
And so then they don't feel like necessary to speak up, as long as a man is to completion, per se, I did that in air quotes for people listening, then we had sex, and sex is fulfilling.
Yeah.
So contrast that, which I'm sure a lot of us can identify with. What's a better way?
Well, I love the better way being both people getting a little bit pissy and sad that they've been sold this bill of goods that sex needs to just look one particular way. I think for heterosexual people, I think for those who are in the LGBT community where your sexuality is automatically by definition sort of outside of what we as a culture have said is good, right, normal, there is a kind of expansiveness that can come from that space because you can't possibly follow
Outside the box.
Yeah, so there is I think there can be possibilities for creativity, imagination, But I think
You've already made that. They've already made that leap.
Already made that leap.
Yeah.
For all of the, not that it's in any way, shape, or form easier. It's not about that, but it's about just sort of in terms of being outside of a script. When a male body and a female body come together for sex, like that script is just so heavy. So it's like layers and layers of her sense of duty, as you were saying, that like the goal of sex is his completion. Like that's generational inheritance, this idea that sex is part of a woman's duty, or it is a woman's duty to provide that for a male partner. So just even to be able to say to a male partner, I just was talking to somebody earlier today about this question of like, she went to her OBGYN, and the OBGYN was encouraging her to be a bit more empowered in the bedroom and to say to her male partner, I think I could have an orgasm if we would maybe do, and so she tried that, and her male partner was like, I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me what I'm doing. So it's his, and his conditioning is to be in charge, to not need direction, to not, so there's a way in which like that, to be conditioned as a boy, as a man, like part of that masculine conditioning is to just know. How the hell could you know?
Yeah.
How could you know? You have not had a vulva in this lifetime. You have not, and sex education in our country, which is another whole road we can go down, didn't prepare you. Pornography doesn't prepare you. So by what means would you know?
Porn's the worst. Porn could be a 10-minute conversation, I think, in the injustices that it does to these types of issues and conversations.
Let me. Okay, so I want to kind of wrap up orgasm, and I have a couple pointed questions for the both of you on how to do that. If the traditional kind of what we've been told about sex is really limiting, what's the alternative? And give me 2 or 3 things that couples, men, women can do to kind of get to that next level of a better sex life.
I would say number 1 would be communicate, right? Because a lot of this is because people aren't communicating. Even though a lot of what we've talked about is men versus women, even within a gender, there's a lot of differences. So I think the first thing is just starting with, what do you like? What makes you feel good? And then trying to figure out, do you know what makes you feel good? Are there different things that we could try? Have you tried things alone? These kind of things. So I think communication is just really the first step into opening up a lot of different avenues.
That was funny because my question was like, all right, give me the techniques. Like, where do you touch? What do you do?
Right.
Let's communicate. I'm like, that's great. So where do you touch? What do you do?
Right, exactly.
But I think your point is
everyone's different. Everyone's different.
And what gives you an orgasm on Tuesday may not give you an orgasm on Friday.
Right.
So it's
not a formula.
It's not a formula.
It is, and I love what you're saying about communication, because research shows that more couples than not really struggle to talk about sex. Of course, because where do we ever learn how to talk about sex? And so in Taking Sexy Back, we spend a lot of time. I have collected all these tips along the way from couples. I met a couple who uses puppets to talk about sex because it just adds enough distance, right? That they can feel less self-conscious than the face-to-face, what do you want? And it can sort of become playful, and so it puts this distance that creates intimacy. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful, creative workaround. So there's some couples, it works best if they've had a glass of wine and they're in the bathtub together, whatever it is that kind of helps them feel like they can become more curious about it. So that's a really important one. And what you're also saying too, especially for those with a vulva, masturbation, I think, is really, you're not going to find a sex and relationship therapist who's not going to encourage, even if her male partner is like, I will do anything, just his mere presence it may be really hard for her to stop that cultural socialization she has to make sure he's okay. So she may literally need him to be out of the room, out of the house, and she just have some time to just start to follow sensation. Figure out how does sensation travel through her body, how to stay present to it, how to notice it, how to grow it and expand it, and then bring a partner in where she can hold on to herself while being connected to him. Time girls are this big, we are taught to make sure everybody else is okay. Mm-hmm. And if orgasm is someplace we want to go, even though we're not saying we have to go there every time, if that's something that we would like to explore a bit more, we have to be selfish and a bit greedy and a bit with our attention on ourselves.
I think that's a great point. I've never thought about it that way, about the once the man is present, then the mind automatically goes to giving again and forgetting that you can receive as well. I think another really important point about masturbation is also just self-awareness and being comfortable with yourself, because we know this not just physically but also emotionally. You have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to love yourself before you can really even experience something else with somebody else. So I think, if that can also relate to physically in terms of masturbation, that I think when people become more aware of themselves and what gives them pleasure, then they become more comfortable with the idea of giving themselves pleasure, and then therefore that can translate with a partner.
I love this topic because so much comes out in it, right? These relationship dynamics and who you see yourself and how you've always understood yourself to be as a man and a woman. There's just, it's so rich for all.
So rich.
And not to talk about pathology, but the challenges come, like rubber hits the road,
Well, and that's why I think it's so important to have like multi-disciplines when you're discussing these topics, because, if let's say I see a patient and I break down the anatomy and I talk to her about where things are, and I, encourage her to take a mirror and masturbate. That's still, a lot of that is still very physical. I can't undo in the office or talking about things medically with the 20 years that she grew up where her parents heard the word sex and she had to cover her ears and close her eyes, and this deeply enrooted shame which is around sex, which is with a lot of people in American society, and even more so in other societies, as well as I feel like there's this, as women we're also taught this whole, and I've talked about this at another podcast before, of this whole idea of you're bad,
right?
Like good girls don't want to have sex, good girls don't want to masturbate or talk about sex in public or all of that. Yeah.
Right.
So that's so much of that, is how we grow up, what we're exposed to as an early age, the schools we went to, the company we kept. So I mean, it's just, you need both the physical and the emotional and the therapy and all of that stuff to really break this stuff down, I think.
Talk to me about shame in sex. What does that mean?
I think you can be shameful for a lot of things during sex, but I think what you're referring to, what we're talking about now, is kind of more where you grow up in a way, or that you create these kind of schemas in your mind, or that there's a stigma around sex and sexuality, and that if you are to feel a certain way or do certain things, then people sometimes become shameful towards it, feeling bad about themselves. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, shame, the definition of shame is it's an emotion that just kind of indicates a sense that, like, I am wrong, damaged, dirty.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not guilt, right? Guilt is I did a thing that I don't feel good about. And guilt can actually be
helpful,
a motivator to kind of course correct, make a repair, learn something from the thing we did. But shame pulls me out of connection. I can't be both in shame and connected. I can't be both in shame and aroused. Like, wait a minute.
So I want to pause and think about that, because you
really
guys say
good. Yeah.
you guys say so many things. We're going so fast. I can't, but I want to emphasize this one for the folks. I can't be both in shame and connected. Tell me more about that. The equation I use in my teaching is like for every couple problem. Well, first of all, every sexual problem is a couple problem. Like when somebody's in relationship, every sexual problem is a couple problem. Erectile dysfunction, couple problem. Low sex drive, couple problem. Like it's all needs to be housed within the relational system. That's your problem. Right, and that's when we know we're not being relational, is when it's sort of like something's wrong with you, the finger pointing blame, you're frigid. Jim's impotence is really holding us back. That's a blame story. Yeah. And then the shame story is I'm bad, I'm dirty.
I'm worthy or guilty.
Something's wrong with Jim, he can't get an erection.
Right, that's right. And I think for men I think a challenge with erection and shame go hand in hand. It's even the commercials. I was listening, like on the radio, there's a commercial for some erectile dysfunction medication. It was like, guys hate to talk about this, so you can do this sort of online, get your medication online, don't have to talk about it. And there's a way in which that commercial, I'm sure it's a brilliant marketing hook, but there's a way that it really reinforces this is shameful and you should not talk about it. And if a man is struggling with his erection and he feels ashamed about it, he is the walls go up and his partner is left in the cold. And she or he can't be near him in it and can't say, I love you and we're in this together and this is our challenge and this is our opportunity to be creative, to find whatever it is. Like none of those.
As you're saying that to me, like I'm imagining, and I'm like, that would be really hard.
Sure.
That would be so hard to hear and to allow, and just feel incredibly weak.
Yes, because your conditioning has been about your worth being tied to your sexual prowess.
Yeah.
You did not ask for that conditioning. The patriarchy gave you that sense that your ability to perform, that's the other thing. We use this very like performance-based language around sex that reinforces the idea that anything less than following the script to a T is failure. So not being able to keep an erection, failure. That's
instead of a performance script, what's better? What should we move to?
I love mindfulness for this. We talk a lot about mindfulness these days, which is an ancient Eastern Buddhist practice of just being with present moment awareness and noticing the stories that we are at risk of attaching, right? There goes my erection, I'm a failure. Dropping the story and just coming back to the moment. That's mindfulness. So bringing mindfulness into the bedroom is beautiful because now sex, rather than being something that we are, like something that's goal-oriented, the goal of this experience is to get to orgasm. If it's mindful, the goal is just, there is no goal.
There is no goal.
We're just together. We are just touching, being touched, and just kind of being together in this space. And we don't know where it's going to go. It doesn't have to go anywhere. It's like letting go of an outcome, any particular outcome.
Letting go of the outcome and kind of just focusing on the experience of being sexually connected and with another person.
Yeah, which is a hell of a lot more vulnerable than just narrowly focusing. I think the reason we avoid that is it's vulnerable.
Right.
To just be.
It's so interesting as you're saying this, because what I was thinking about is it just totally hits, it's like a full circle on what we were talking about in terms of like the paternalistic views of sex, and that the sex is the goal of the man's completion, because that's not being in the present, right?
No.
That's automatically already thinking of the future and the ending of the story as opposed to being in the present, because mindfulness is about staying in the present. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I think it's really interesting when you talk about, well, what's mindfulness and its presence, and it's like, well, what happens when you're living in the future? You're thinking about the future. Well, that's what produces anxiety. And then what happens when you're also thinking about the past? Well, that's what often can produce like depression and depressive symptoms. Whereas if you stay in the middle and you can just think about, if you're walking into intercourse and the only goal is for the man to have an orgasm, how that could really produce anxiety as well on everybody's
Absolutely.
end, as opposed to just being in the present moment and just experiencing what you're experiencing and feeling what you're feeling. It's interesting.
I remember when I was in residency and I had my own office and men would come in with impotence. And I was like, great, like all these things I can talk about, like let's talk about diet and exercise and weight and all these, and I remember I'll never forget this first guy, and he comes in and I was like, okay, well, what are you eating? What are you doing? All right, well, let's do this, and I want you to be more active, and da-da-da, and he isn't able to get a satisfactory erection. And he comes back, whatever, a little bit later, and he's just like this. He's just like looking at me. He's like, bro, where's the Viagra? Just give me the Viagra. Get me out of here. That's the quick fix solution thing. I have a handful of friends now. I give them Viagra. And they know who they are, and some of them are probably listening to this podcast right now. You know who you are. Hello. And sometimes we'll start talking about, the reason I thought about this is you said, in the moment, a man will often kind of shut down to his female partner and not go there, just feel embarrassed, like what's wrong with me? I can't keep it up, even though it's very common, even for a normal, healthy, whatever, in the course of having sex to go soft for a little bit.
Absolutely.
But like you're saying, it's like, if I'm not this rock hard erection the whole time and I'm able to get it done, there's something wrong with me. So they'll come to me and ask for Viagra, and that's like the tip of the iceberg, right? So if they're willing to kind of open that up and kind of get deeper, it can get really interesting about what's going on. A lot of it is, what is in your head? Like, where are you? Are you thinking about somebody else, whatever? Or like you said with Bible, are you present in this moment, feeling your body, feeling all your stuff? That's one. And for the guys listening, this isn't me being critical. It's like opening a door of, hey, there's so much more to this in terms of what you can do, like understanding yourself. What if there's really nothing wrong with you?
That's right.
What if your penis is almost like a thermometer and it's giving you information of, hey, something's off here. Maybe I'm not connected. Maybe I don't feel secure in the relationship. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're tired. Whatever it is, like, what if it means something that's valuable information? And it's not, I keep wanting to use a certain word, it's not, there's something wrong with me that I can't bang my way through this,
Right. Right.
And what I find is most men don't want to go there. It's very scary. It's hard. But when you kind of crack that open and you get into that, it just opens up a whole new world of kind of an inner emotional and spiritual life that it's like, that's part of why I do this stuff. It's like, guys, there's really nothing to be afraid of. There's so much more to us than these surface level things. And so, but it's challenging. It's hard. And so guys will come to me a little more comfortable, and it's just like, your couples therapist, one step at a time, layers. It's kind of these exploring this stuff one step. Okay, I'm safe with this idea about me, but no, I'm safe with, okay, maybe there's other things that go on that affect my erection besides my manliness, like being tired. And then maybe the next time it's like, oh, my emotions do matter. Oh, how connected I am to my partner, and in the moment, how safe I feel in the relationship, and all that stuff.
Well, and there's something that I think could be really profoundly healing for a man to be with a partner, to lose his erection, and then to allow himself to be seen anyways, right? To stay present to a female partner, to their partner, to just stay present to it, to be held, to be loved, to feel secure, regardless of what the penis is doing or not doing. Like, there's something really that kind of like completes the loop there, that's like a gift that one might be able to receive if one doesn't like wall off when that vulnerability comes up.
That's so terrifying.
And
it's
so terrifying.
Because what if you get shamed?
This weak man, sorry for the weakness that I am. That's like what that.
But I think it's both, because I think, both people tend to shut down because of the script that we've been told. And what I think a lot of women do in those situations is they automatically start thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I not hot? I gained 10 pounds. He doesn't want to have sex with me anymore. He's having sex with somebody else. Right. Like, they immediately start that chain of shame within themselves. So now we have both partners doing a shame spiral on themselves. Yeah. He's weak. He's not virile. He's not a good man. And she's not sexy, pretty, whatever else is going on.
It's the same shame story.
It's the same. It's sad, actually.
Yeah. So his desire to just have the easy fix may also be a desire to save her from what he imagines her negative feelings would be if he's not able to keep an erection. So it's like sort of he's like taking care of he's protecting himself, and maybe in his mind he's also protecting her from.
So the more that we talk about these things, I think, and the more that we start to realize how normal, and when I say normal, I mean, that's a I don't know if that's the right word, how common, how common these things are, then we won't be as quick to react when anybody is confronted with something like this.
How do we get out of this? As we're talking about it, I'm imagining myself in it, and I'm just like, this is so sticky. Like, she's reacting to my, like you get into this kind of enmeshment stuff. Like, how do you get out of this?
I think part of it is what I'm saying is education, awareness, the more that we talk about this stuff publicly, read about it, read books,
Yeah.
all of that, then people always like, when you become educated and you have more knowledge on something, then you can become more comfortable with it. And because you're not operating just from your own bias, right? Now you have more information. I think that's helpful.
So let me this question before both of you. Okay, let's imagine man and woman are having sex. Man goes soft. What do you do in that moment? What should the man do? The woman? How does that look?
I think it would be, I think for him to be able to just kind of say, like, I've gone soft, let's go back to kissing or whatever, or just to kind of like name it. I think that's we have this like expression in therapy where we say name it to tame it, right? So just naming it, just to say it, like we both know what just happened there, and
I would
for
probably
her.
use humor.
But humor can be a deflection, so you have to be careful about that.
I can't imagine it's hard to even repeat what you said. Yeah.
So, yeah, but to name it
Oops.
keeps the shame, right? Well, yeah, and then oops, it sort of implies like I've done something wrong, something's gone wrong.
That's what I'm saying. And sometimes humor, I think humor can lighten certain situations, but I think if we're really talking about real vulnerability and real presence, then humor can deflect from that because you're not being
there's something,
real in that moment.
There's something under there that's scary.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But I think, so the naming, and I think the thing that I was going to add to that is not saying sorry, because sorry immediately, so that's what a lot of people do, would be like, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, which sorry is is a term that sometimes then does imply I've done something wrong.
That's right. I also like, what I would like him to remember in that moment is like, okay, so this part is not going to be able to penetrate right now, but it's a wonderful thing that I have an entire symphony. I have so many other instruments in my orchestra that I can continue to bring to this experience with my partner. Like, it's not, her pleasure doesn't hinge on what my penis is doing or not doing. I will use my hands. I will use my mouth. I will ask her what would be fun for her.
What do you like? Show me something.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
want me to do?
And then a lot of times during that process, then the erection will probably naturally come back if you're not focused.
For sure.
Focused on the
Wait a minute,
failure.
say
and
this
the
stuff
shame.
again.
Yes.
How do we get it to come back?
Well, I don't know for sure, but
I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Just not focusing on it.
not focusing on it.
So maybe when it happens, you can kind of say something and then focus on her. Learn something new that she likes. Ask her. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, because it may, going soft may be just a moment in time, right? This experience doesn't need to be over in 3.5 minutes. So maybe now we change it up. We do something, we scale it back. We go back to kissing. We do massage. We just put our attention elsewhere. And then if and when it comes back, then penetration's back on the table, if anybody wants it to be on the table. Or, oral sex for him is back on the table if that's, but it doesn't have to be, it just could become then, we were maybe planning to go down that road, but now we're going to go down this road instead. But I do think it's also the context. Like if it's in the context of a one-night stand, it might be a heck of a lot more threatening to talk about it than versus in a really secure relationship.
And who knows, if it's a one-night stand, you may not want to talk about it because you might know, you don't always have to be so forthcoming and
really
vulnerable.
right here.
Like
I'm getting out of here before you wake up in the morning.
Exactly.
Like, no need to share the feelings.
So you don't necessarily have to, but this is for people that are in a situation that, it's something they want to explore within themselves and with a partner.
But you were hitting on this before, that sort of relating to your penis as a source of data is a really interesting. I think a lot of men don't think of it that way. I had a really dear friend of mine who was realizing that when he was in sort of these non-relationship casual sex experiences, his erection was far less reliable. And he had this like aha moment where he was like, it turns out there's a direct line from my penis to my heart.
Aw, that's sweet. But it's true.
I
think you told me a story similar to that, right? You said you had a lot of guys that were, I think unsatisfied with sex, and then when they got into like a real, relationship that was fulfilling in other ways, and they realized, oh, sex can be really much more amazing than when I was out there having sex with a million
Yeah,
people.
there's a buddy of mine that's married with a couple kids now, and when he was single, he divorced, when he was single for a period, that was his experience, was because there's so much insecurity and like and he was like, once he got with his wife and he really loved her, they connected and he felt safe, that problem went away.
Sure.
I'm old enough, I'll out myself a little bit, about the penis being a thermometer. It never lies. Like, it really never lies. And it's just a matter of, my brain will be like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then, but there's other parts that, and I'll say this too, it's about emotion. It really is that connection piece to it that is, it's just richer, you know?
I heard a story of a man whose husband cheated on him, and he developed erectile dysfunction when he found out about his husband's affair. And it was just like his body is like, no, I will not be available to you in that way again right now. Like, I am too hurt. And so to just sort of treat that erectile dysfunction as like a medical problem out of the context of betrayal and hurt and the need to rebuild trust would really be to do a disservice, not just to him, but to his husband and to their journey together as a couple.
So he was having erectile dysfunction, and then what's the story? What does it mean? You know,
Right.
Oh, there's something medically wrong with my penis and the vasodilation of whatever. And it's like, no, the significance is you feel hurt. You're not ready to do that again.
I love that we're talking about this because, you know, we talk a lot about, well, for me as an OBGYN, female sexuality and how multifactorial that is. And I think we've kind of gotten to a point where more people are knowledgeable about that a woman, you know, there's a lot of times it's an emotional component and it's a body image component and all this for her to have libido and desire. And I think that's becoming a little bit more understood. But you almost never hear it talked about amongst men, that it's a multifactorial, you know, emotional situation that for them to really have satisfying intercourse.
It's I wouldn't 20 years ago, I may not have believed it, but it's totally a thing, and it's a big thing. And I think the good news for men is more and more it's okay to go there, you know, and actually to truly as a man sit in your power, what's true for you and what you really value. It means connecting at deeper levels to all of this stuff. And so, you know, that's the best sex and the strongest erection, you know, is like when it's all of this stuff and it's all connected.
When you feel fully, like your whole self is there.
Yeah, the holistic, the whole, and all these, you know, when you really, all that stuff. Yeah. As opposed to like, well, I'm not connected, or, you know, maybe this isn't, do I really want to be doing this, or something feels wrong to me, but I'm going to do it anyway, you know, that kind of divided thing.
It is, it's, in the Taking Sexy Back, I wrote a chapter for male partners of women who are, so women are, you know, this book is written really for those who've been socialized in the feminine, but as a couples therapist, I know that when you make change in one part of a system, you shake the system, right?
Yeah.
So I really wanted women who have male partners, or just women who have male allies in their world. I wanted the men to feel like they really had an understanding of what this journey that she's been on to really reclaim a sense of her sexuality as located inside of her, and to deepen that relationship. I wanted men to have a sense of like what that was about and kind of how to hold space for that coming forward. And there is a parallel process for men, because that is the story we tell men. It's just that you are, because you're a man, your sexuality is inherently predatory. You want it all the time. It is your main goal in life. And that's a very thin, narrow story that sells male psychology and male complexity short. It does men no good.
I think that also the really great thing about this for women is that if men start becoming more aware and start realizing it's more of a complex story, and then all the things that you just said start to kind of move away, then we also stop objectifying women.
Right.
Because part of that story, the other end of that story is she's an object, she's a sex object, she's here for my pleasure. And so I think that'd be great in that regard.
It's the thing I hate most about those dress code rules. Like when schools will say like that your tank top straps have to be this many inches wide, or your shorts have to be this many inches long. It is in part, it's very shaming to girls, but what it says to boys is really problematic. It says to boys, your sexuality is so dangerous.
It's uncontrollable.
So out of control
Yeah.
that we have to actually make the world safer for you. Versus teaching straight boys, yes, you can notice. You can notice a bare shoulder. You can feel the rush inside of you, and you can ground that energy. You can
control
notice
it,
it,
yeah.
you can feel it, you can ground it, you can redirect your attention to the task at hand. And when we don't give boys that message, we create such a dangerous situation for everybody.
God, I remember it's. I remember when I was going through adolescence and coming to terms with that stuff. It's so powerful.
Really, the energy.
Oh my God! Like when you're. Yeah. Can I turn to the audience for this? Is it only me?
No, not at all. It's fascinating that you draw the line kind of in grade school and how they start to differentiate all these kinds of expectations for males and females.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God, it's incredible. I guess, what would I tell myself back then? It's like, you're going to feel some powers, buddy. It's okay. They're good, And let's talk about how to express them and what it's about and just thinking back to those days. I mean, I was
so poorly informed, man.
Well, but
Yeah.
I found
When all the emotions and everything floods through you, like all we have is MTV and Nickelodeon, and the stuff that like you've been conditioned by already, and
Yeah.
there's no way to know like this is normal, this is how it's
you
supposed to
got
feel.
you got your friends, right?
Yeah.
That's a terrible source of
Terrible.
information
Terrible.
in junior high.
offer.
Now you've got porn
Porn,
everywhere.
Well, and then
Another
there's
very
voices on the
kind
internet
of
telling you what to do.
limited thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys.
Dads, right? We need dad. Like this is a beautiful place for a dad to step in because every dad has been a boy, so the dads
true.
know, right? They have memories,
The
and so
elder
they
man,
can.
your dad.
Yeah, right. Some kind of elder who can say like, "This is it's just what you're saying. Like it feels so strong, and here's what I remember," and to just kind of like hold that space and rather than just. I think sometimes what dads will offer is a set of like, don't do this, don't do this, don't, which is, it is important
What
to
do I
say,
do with this?
here's the parameters, but then also just to really, as you're saying, normalize it, listen, right? I think oftentimes parents get very top down, very directive, versus just like talk, like just
Well, and
listening.
so much of that is culturally. I mean, even so porn, for instance, like, and this is a long topic too. But I'm just thinking about all the don'ts, right? That's one of them. Don't look at that magazine. Don't look at that video. Don't masturbate. Don't. As opposed to more of a collective kind of parenting way of doing it, which is what are you interested in seeing? And let me kind of talk to you about what's appropriate about this, what's not appropriate about this, something where, and I see you're weirded out. You're like, if my dad wanted to watch porn with me, I would have freaked out.
I'm thinking about various stories from my childhood that, well, you say that, but it was like, I grew up and I knew that if I either stayed up late enough and with my dad for HBO and whatever, I could see some boobs.
Yeah, a little skinemax.
Totally.
A little skinemax. Yeah.
Boobs,
Yeah.
or if I went over to Scott Lang's house.
You could see some boobs.
Or Scott, my neighbor would come over and he'd be like, "Can we watch Splash again?" I'm like,
Yeah,
"It's a terrible Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah.
Why do you want to watch Splash?" Because Daryl Hannah gets naked in that. Right? Like these are my early memories of this stuff, and like it was okay, but we didn't really talk about it.
You don't talk about it.
There might have been some magazines upstairs.
Yeah.
And my mother found them at a certain point and threw them all away
Yeah,
instead
you
of being
don't
like, "Hey, what was it?"
What are
What
you
was
curious
that?
about?
What are you
Right.
curious about? And maybe
What is
more
that?
guidance with it as opposed to just
No.
I mean, and women go through that too. It's under the script of, you can't. Boys are out to get you. That's
Right.
usually the number one. Boys are out to get you. Stay away from boys. When really,
I've
women
got a
have.
daughter, and part of that, I'm like, "Hey, come here.
Yeah.
He ever does that to
Yeah,
you again,
yeah.
I'm breaking his hand
Yeah.
off." You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I mean, and part of it.
some of it is there is
There's a
something that I'm afraid of.
Of
as
course,
a
there's
father.
genuine fear, and not to say that women shouldn't shouldn't. I mean, I had a talk. Same thing. I remember my mom came to me when I started junior high. Is if anyone ever touches you in certain ways or you feel uncomfortable, and I think that's appropriate. I mean, you should be having, because you want to make sure your children understand what's not okay. But I think there should be more talking about what is okay.
Sure.
And
It's incomplete.
it's incomplete. It's incomplete.
Intimate touch and things like that, like kids, like it's okay for kids to play and hug and, and stuff like that. And I hate when it gets mixed up in all of this sexuality and stuff at a young age with children.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You touched on this a little bit. This is such a big topic, but I want to go there. Can we talk about body image for a minute?
Sure.
In relation to sexuality, how it holds a lot of us back, men and women, what a better way is.
I think when talking about body image in relation to sexuality, I think that it's just something that we don't talk enough about. I think especially for women, a lot of their desire to be with their partner is multifactorial, and there's a lot that, comes with that. There's the relationship, there's, what else she might have going on in her life, but a big part of it is the comfort with herself, and part of their comfort with yourself has to do with body image and how you feel about yourself and how that relates to your sexuality and you wanting to be sexual with another person.
It's really, I think that to be socialized in the feminine is to constantly relate to your body as a project. That it's never thin enough, never fit enough. That's really so normative. There are entire economies that would collapse if women were to
100%.
just
Our economy, probably.
Okay,
Stop buying.
Yeah. Just to not see the body as something that constantly needs work, effort, tweaking, and this is not to. I know that for men this is true as well, but there is something particular about women and body image, and so that doesn't stop at the bedroom door, right? So if all day long my story has been, I didn't work out today, I shouldn't have eaten that, my thighs are this, then to then enter an intimate space with my partner, it's not going to stop. Those stories inside my head are going to continue to play. Yeah. I'm at risk of projecting them onto my partner and imagining that he feels about my body the way I feel about my body, and that all of that chatter is going to really block my ability to be mindful, my ability to feel entitled to feeling good in this skin just as I am, to feel like I am entitled to sensation, to pleasure. So there is
feeling sexy.
To feeling sexy, right? That sexy is, and I think there is a way that we can put this idea out there, like my libido will be stronger once I lose my baby weight, in air quotes, or that, once all these things get in place, then I will have more desire. And the problem with putting our happiness or our desire out there is that inevitably when we get to that finish line, we come up with a new finish line, or it isn't, or we realize. So I think we are drawn to try to fix the problem, and when we think the problem lives in the body or lives on the scale, the pounds on the scale,
or in the mirror or whatever.
And then it is, and it isn't. It's so that's big, and that is something I think that can feel so normal to be at war with ourselves, that to even notice it as a potential impairment to pleasure. That's a connection right there that may be really important to make as a first step of that I am aware that my body image, that noise in my head really takes me out of.
Well, think about when we were just talking about the erectile thing. What did I say was the reflex of the woman to think?
Yeah.
I'm not hot. I gained 10 pounds. It's so ingrained in us.
Oh, he went soft because of me.
Yes,
I'm not
because
pretty
of me.
enough.
I'm not pretty. It's so
enough,
ingrained in us to you're 100% on the nose how ingrained it is in us to be constantly aware of what we look like and how that relates with sex. It's wild, actually.
And the truth is that if we were to drop the idea that my body is something that needs to be constantly worked on, we probably would still exercise from a place of joy, gratitude. Just it feels really good. It wouldn't be I have to exercise in order to be okay. It would be I get to exercise.
I think that's a good distinction that needs to be made, is that it's okay to care about your appearance. I think it's okay to care about your health. I think it's okay to, care about things. It's just different when you're mindful of it. And I think it's different when you're, like you said, using it, it's like a project. And if I could be this, then I could be this.
Right.
That's different, as opposed to this is who I am and these are the things that I like and care about. Right? Right.
You and I were talking about this as doctors. There's a problem with obesity.
Yes.
More and more younger people, generations, are become more people are dying from all of these heart disease, strokes, all this stuff. Obesity makes worse. How do you put both of these messages side by side?
And
right?
I think that's
you're
difficult.
okay. You can be sexy, accept your body as you are, and
Right.
at certain weights, there's increased risk of disease, dying,
Right,
and all that stuff that we need to do something about. Eat healthier.
I
and
think
exercise.
that's definitely a challenge.
How do you say both?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge. One thing I do want to ask Dr. Solomon before we go to there, and it might go with it though, is I think part of that key of making that separation, and let me know what you think, is that your complete self-worth isn't attached to it. That's part of it too, I think.
Well, and we conflate health and thinness, right? Where there's a whole movement, sort of a healthy at any weight movement, right? Like weight is not necessarily an indicator of health. It's not the only indicator of health. And then thinness, people can be thin and unhealthy or heavy and healthy. So it's just a way.
Look good and be unhealthy.
And when we start talking about obesity, we need to look at the entire systems of food, right? How food and socioeconomic status are incredibly entwined, right? We've got a massive problem with income inequality and food and how that becomes a food inequality. And so to take any one individual and say your obesity is your fault without looking at the factors that go into that is really.
And I don't think you're necessarily, I know what you're saying as a physician standpoint, because I don't think you're necessarily saying it's someone's fault, that there's different factors that are playing in, social, psychological, just, growing up with certain habits, not being able, certain things haven't been modeled to you. You're not saying it's someone's fault, but I still think it is a challenge to be able to tell someone or to send a message of, acceptance and body positivity and self-love, and at the same time say, maybe you're not as healthy as you could be. It is challenging.
I follow this gal, Jamila.
Yeah, I do too.
And there's a lot of her stuff that I like, and it's very clear what her message is. But there's a doctor side of me that's like, I know some people are going to hear this and not
I think
take care of themselves. I think it goes too far. And so I'm
Yes.
like, what is the message?
I agree with you. I mean, I have a challenge as a physician, personally and mentally, trying to come to a conclusion about that, because, I do think that we shouldn't be mean to people or shame people, or I think also you shouldn't associate certain things. I think that's what a lot of people do, and that I think a lot of that is important about body positivity, is that we look at a lot of people look at someone, she's obese. Okay, well then that means she's lazy. That means she's ugly. That means she's stupid. That mean, this sounds silly, but those are the connections that people make a lot of times. And so I think what a lot of body positivity is saying is that this is a person, you don't know this person, you don't know what's going on with this person, and this is how she looks, and you should accept her for who she is and how she looks as people and within society. Be kind to others, right? I don't necessarily think that it's saying don't do your best to eat healthy, exercise, and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
At least that's what I would like to try to forge. But I know exactly the challenge that you're speaking of, because it's a hard message, because we'll see people out, being praised for certain body positivity, and then as a physician, you're like, well, if that person came to my office, I would be doing an injustice to them if I didn't say, let's talk about your diet, let's talk about your exercise, and that's hard.
Yeah. Something that, yeah. All right, Reb, I don't want to end yet. What time is it? Okay.
Oh, I need to go.
Oh,
yeah, that's
you
right.
gotta go.
You want to wrap? Yeah, we'll close out.
You guys, this was so good.
It was so good.
Thank you both for being here and bouncing things back and forth. This was fun. I had a good time.
It was really good.
Okay, so you've done this before. You're new to the show. So the guests closed the show. So I don't know if you guys could. So wait a minute. Where can people find you?
The easiest way to find me is my website, dralexandrasolomon.com. I'm also active on social media. I have a Facebook, Dr. Alexandra Solomon, and Instagram, dr.alexandra.solomon. I really have been having fun with social media, but the website is the easiest way to find out about events and upcoming courses that I'm offering.
Okay, great. How about you?
And I'm Dr. Pari Ghodsi. I'm pretty well known as Dr. Pari though, so you can find my website, drpari.com, and it's Pari, and same on social media. You can find me, Dr. Pari.
You guys want to close out the show into the camera?
All right. You want to do it? I've been here, so I'll let you do it.
Maybe you could help her do it together since you've done it.
All right. So I'm Dr. Pari Ghodsi. This was Dr. Alexandra Solomon. This is Dr. Larry Burchett. We've been hanging out with, having a good time with. I hope you guys have really enjoyed watching this episode, listening to it, and come back, see more.
First ever panel. I hope you loved it. You take a little screenshot and share it.
Okay.
Tag me. I promise I'll respond. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Follow on the YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. We'll see you.
Spotify now.
And Spotify now. We'll see you next time.
Great.
Thanks for watching.